Yes, everybody. I know the internet's a buzz now. Facebook yesterday, I had posted an article as soon as I heard about the passing of Eddie Van Halen. I posted it, and it seemed like it must have been in the early stages, but literally within the hour, my entire feed on Facebook, every article I saw for the longest scroll down, it was a different article about Eddie Van Halen. And so it is obviously the buzz. This is a day after. We've all been touched by, the loss. And I just wanted to kind of, I know everybody's making tribute videos and you're seeing all that. And I just wanted to throw in my 2 cents worth. Because, I was there in the early days and, I will say I'm not a guitar player. So I'm not one of those ones that has that story of how he inspired me to play guitar. He was an amazing guitar player, probably to the point where I would never even want to try to play guitar because of that. But no. So yeah, I mean, obviously he was a big influence on so many people, and so I don't have that story to tell as far as his influence on my playing, things along that line. I noticed that the guitar player from the last band I was in, him and we used to, I mean, we played Eruption during the concerts, during the show. So it was definitely an influence on him, and we had fun with that, and we, did some Van Halen. And so, he's greatly influenced. But I don't have that, I don't have that connection. But anyway, here's my story. If you've been watching my channel for any length of time, you probably know I cut my teeth in rock and roll on Kiss. In the 70s, I listened to a lot of what was popular at the time. The disco, the Bee Gees, the Saturday Night Fever soundtrack, the Grease soundtrack, the Andy Gibbs, Anita Wood, the stuff that was popular at that time. And so a friend of mine turned me on to Kiss around 77, maybe it was 78, I think. So I'm like, 12 years old. Saw him in concert in 79 at, the age of almost 13. So that was the first and only rock band that I listened to from like 70 whenever, 77, it's kind of blurry, 78-ish, until about 2 years later, maybe a year and a half later. We moved in 1979, or it was either late 79 or early 1980, we moved to a different neighborhood, strictly, literally a mile, 2 miles from where I used to live, but it was a different neighborhood, different people. And I met a kid who across the street who was into rock and roll, and he loved Kiss. But he also loved this band called Van Halen. That was one of his second most favorite bands. And at that point, honestly, I had never heard of him. It wasn't like that kind of stuff was on the radio that much. So through him, I discovered this new band. It was just Kiss before. That was pretty much all that consumed me that I can recall. And then he introduces me to Van Halen. Now, I'm not going to be showing records. I've only got a handful of their stuff on vinyl, and some of this earlier stuff I have yet to get. But at the time I discovered them, I'm about 90% sure that this was the new album. I'm not thinking that it was the next one. I'm pretty sure. All I remember is playing this album to death once I learned about Van Halen. This was to me Van Halen. This photo, still to this day, is like what I call like the high watermark look. That's what Van Halen looks like. That was just when they looked the best. This was just the album. Still probably ranks up there in my top 2 or 3 Van Halen albums. And it's funny because there's not a whole lot of hits on this album. So like the other day, literally weeks ago, we were driving, my wife and I, heading somewhere. And I was just randomly playing stuff in the car on Spotify. And I started playing a bunch of songs from this. And obviously she's a Van Halen fan, but really she knows the hits. She doesn't know the deeper stuff. So she wasn't aware when I started playing things like Could This Be Magic? I don't know what I was playing, all kinds of stuff. I was bouncing around and playing a lot of the weird stuff like Ice Cream Man and some of the acoustic lighter stuff, and just because I was keeping it light in the car. But anyway, started playing stuff from this, and she could tell it was David Lee Roth, and she knew it was Van Halen, but it wasn't a song she was totally familiar with. But I still go back to this album. It's still, to me, you know, the starting point, the highlight of, growing up and listening to that. And then second to that would be Fair Warning. So that's why I'm not 100% sure if this was already out, but I remember this being, to me, a favorite until this came, and then this took over. These two albums, to me, were Van Halen, and this is where my love really took off. And we saw him on this tour. I actually, the friend of mine who introduced me to him, I reached out to him today, and I'm like, okay, remind me, because I'm getting old. We did see them, right, in 81 and 82, or I didn't know it. I knew 81, and I knew the Diver Down tour, and I knew 1984. And I'm like, can you remind me? Because either I saw them twice. I can definitely remember where I sat and the angle that we sat at for definitely two concerts. But I couldn't remember. But I remember having a Fair Warning shirt that I wore. So I'm thinking, I had to have bought this at the 81 tour and then saw them in Diver Down and wore the shirt. But I couldn't 100%. He said, yes, we saw them in 81, 82, and 84. So, again, to me, this was the high watermark. Now, when I went back after learning about Van Halen, I went back, when you go back and you revisit the first two albums, this album obviously has all the hits that everybody knows. It's all over the radio and everybody knew it. This album was kind of an anomaly. This was not one that was played a lot. There wasn't a whole lot that came from this. And for the longest time, I considered this album quite an oddity. It was it kind of stood off as being the orphan child that it just didn't seem to me like it ever really fit with this and these. It's like it just didn't feel right. But over the years, I've grown to absolutely adore this album. The stuff that I thought was so different has become so cool. So, yes, I love this album. Yes, it's quite overplayed. It's the one that you hear from all the time. But between these two, I always go back to this one and listen to this the most. So, and then between these two, it's tough because I listen to these absolutely the most. So that's kind of where I came in to the whole Van Halen world, and that's kind of where I stand with that. And then this one, again, I've mentioned this one when I did pick up the vinyl edition a while back, is probably one of my, when I want to go back to some of the more commercial sounds of Van Halen, this is the one I reach for. I don't reach for this only because it's great, but it's to me way overplayed. We played it too much back in the day. I'm kind of burnt out, and it's a lot more commercial than this. This one has a lot of the songs that I remember just air guitaring to and freaking out for and playing over and over and over. So when it comes to these two, I always lean towards this. So basically, and then I won't even get into the Van Hagar years. I was a huge Sammy Hagar fan before he joined Van Halen. And Van Halen came out with Hagar in that time frame in my life where I had kind of stopped listening to mainstream music, was focusing mainly on Christian music. So I missed out on the 5150. I mean, I heard it. Friends shared it with me. I just never owned it. I didn't get into it. And for most of the Van Hagar years, I kind of was in that phase where I ignored them. Now I go back and listen to them. Now, yeah, they're great stuff. I still prefer Sammy Hagar solo stuff, and I prefer the David Lee Roth era of Van Halen, but all Van Halen is good Van Halen. But it was just saying, I still lean towards being a Sammy Hagar fan more than his time and tenure in Van Halen. And so I'm not going to go in and ramble on anymore. Obviously he's going to be missed. I kind of had a feeling when David Lee Roth in the news a few months ago said he didn't think Eddie would be touring anytime, probably ever, that things must have gotten worse. Knew about the cancer for years. Hadn't heard a lot about it in recent years. Kind of thought he was over it. Kind of thought maybe he had beat it. So I was kind of shocked to find out it never had gone away. Hadn't been keeping up with him, but it's a great loss. And just wanted to kind of give my rundown on where I was on the Van Halen train back in the day. And I cherish the music that he made, and I cherish the music that we have in our possession. And I'm just, prayers go out to the family and all of those who have lost this. And to all of my guitar friends out there who were greatly influenced by him, I know it's a tough loss anytime we lose our heroes for our instruments. So anyway, that's all for now. Thanks a lot for watching.